And I left CNN on very good terms, and I love that company. It flows through my veins. I love all my colleagues. It was great at the conference to see Nima and see the other people from CNN that were there, former CNNers as well. But Twitter, yeah, I'll address Twitter. All anybody wants. I mean, here's the reality of what happened on Twitter. The Charlie Hebdo tweet was hours old. It had nothing to do with Charlie Hebdo. Absolutely nothing. It had to do with this individual that I tweeted Hasbara to. It had to do with the way he treated me back in July, on July 29th, when we disagreed over, I made the comment that the Israeli occupation is the problem. The kidnappings and missiles and all of that are symptoms of the problem. He suggested that somebody in my position really, it was not possible to have that opinion. And I told him, I think in a tweet I said something to the effect of, you know, you seem to love the occupation so much, but you don't love its wonderful consequences. And at this, one of my followers, I can always count on one of them, tweeted out, Clancy 1, Kessler 0. At that point, I got an onslaught of hundreds of attacks, personal attacks. I mean, they started out at anti-Semitic, anti-Semite, and it went downhill from there. And I shut them all down. You know, I mean, I just was blocking them left and right. But it went on for some time. And so when this individual came back, I thought I had him blocked. And when he came back, I tweeted back Hasbara. And of course, that brought it all down again. But, I mean, that's what happened. And the only thing that I regret about it is that I taunted them a bit by replying. I should have just, you know, deleted the post and moved on. Or better yet, I should have saved the post. It was really an eye-opener. One of the really disappointing things as the story was covered, you know, as they were saying that you're drunk, you're deranged, and all these things, they only published one side. They were just my tweets, but you didn't see a single tweet, you know, hurling insults at me. And there were hundreds.
Did CNN see the tweets?
You'd have to ask them. What do you think? I don't know.
No, I meant, did they see the people cursing you? Okay, that's a comment, not a question. Let's open the room for questions.
I'm not a student, is that okay?
Okay, sir, it'd be $5 each then.
She mentioned that nobody remembers their speeches long enough. From your experience, when President Obama gives those long speeches and it looks like he's looking all over the place, is he really following a prompter?
Yeah, there's prompters all over the room. I mean, you can read them from a distance. All that glass that's up in front of him is actually teleprompters, 3 different teleprompters. You know, they all have the same thing in them. They're all scrolling up synchronously. So a lot of people, you know, it's really easy with a teleprompter to give an address. I mean, a lot of times, I just like to use key points. And with that little application that I showed you, you can actually, if you have a second iPhone or iPad, you can actually control how it scrolls. So you tap it once and it stops, you tap it again and it restarts. Or we? Is it the phone? All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Clancy, okay, my name is Talal Shami. I'm a professional. I'm a media professional. I'm also a master's graduate. I'm studying to be a master's in media studies at AUB. Well, what I would like to ask is, first of all, you know, Lebanese and Arab media usually it's a striving media. You know, this is what, if we try to somehow try to look at it from certain perspectives, it's striving media. We're not as professional compared to, let's say, Europe or the U.S. In your point of view, what is it required for Lebanese or Arab media in general for us to be, you know, not striving, probably reach better standards, let's say, from a technical point of view or content, you know?
You know, one of the things that I think is key here is to disassociate political parties and movements from specific newspapers and television stations. I mean, that's the elemental thing that drives the polarity in the Lebanese media space. It does the same thing in the United States. And unfortunately, as channels proliferate, and they're going to, because there are new channels that will get more and more specific. All of what you see now on cable or by satellite is going to be on the internet. If you're familiar with Netflix, I mean, that will become a model where you have a choice. You want to watch the live stream? Do you want to watch the live stream that's coming out to the international audience? Do you want to watch a specific story? You want to search on a topic? You want to search on a reporter to hear their stories? All of those things are going to be available. They already are today, but it's going to just explode. It really is. The media has to find a way to stand in the middle, to be the traffic cop that listens to the different points of view, but makes a serious effort on behalf of journalism, on behalf of educating people, not so much as promoting a political party or a movement.
Can I just say something in this regard? In our region, it's not only about promoting, it's also, journalists are usually harassed by the governments and the regimes. How would you advise to face such issues in our countries?
Well, as May Chidiak knows, one of the goals, one of the major projects of the International Press Institute is to try to do away with these criminal defamation laws, the kinds of laws that have President Erdogan of Turkey ready to put a 12-year-old blogger in jail for, criticizing him. When you can't criticize the leaders of a country, there is no free press. And when governments use this muzzle on the press, there can't really be a free government either. So, it's really limiting for everyone, and it's a serious problem. Another serious problem, I see that the leaders have their role, and they really deserve a lot of criticism. But journalists deserve criticism as well. The journalists that are taking brown bags filled with cash every month, well, maybe not so much.
In Lebanon.
Well, it happens, and that it tears down what journalism really stands for. And it's really an insult to those people who gave their lives for this profession. The people who have made sacrifices like May has made because of all of that. And I'll say it, it's an insult to everyone that believes in journalism.
We have 3 questions.
Let's go, we've got some journalism students that actually have a question.
From Tom, then down here, and then the lady in the blue shirt, and then there's another one over there. Yeah, is it back?
There's this,
first,
yes.
Freddie, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's one.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. We're very honored to have you here. Second, I have a question. Do you think that the Israeli propaganda in CNN and the Western media is on the rise? Or is it like because now they're critical, people are more critical, it's like decreasing?
Well, certainly, and that tweet Hasbara. Hasbara is a Hebrew word that means explanation, and actually it's a positive connotation. It's gotten a negative connotation since the government became involved in this project in the mid or late 80s. And it was a very small project at first, and it's grown over the years, and now it's gotten quite large indeed, and there are foundations in the United States that pay students, I think about $2,000 a year to sit down for 1 or 2 days a week for 15 minutes and supervise Twitter or supervise Facebook, get on all the forums on the internet. But here's the thing, as Hasbara, funding has increased for the Israeli lobby, its propaganda efforts have failed. I mean, the number of young people on campuses who now support the Palestinian cause has risen. Only 25% of students now sympathize with Israel, according to the latest numbers, and you have a full 50% who sympathize with the Palestinians. These are just the broad trends. Propaganda, though, you should never limit it and say that, well, this is a problem with the Israelis. There's plenty of propaganda out there on all sides, and you have to really look at that. In my case, I think that some of the Israelis and some of my Jewish friends in the United States were my strongest supporters, because they realize they themselves have been victimized by these people. But there's also, Arab or Muslim voices out there that are very hateful you know. I don't like trolls on the internet, and I guess everybody's figured that out.
So there was another one down here.
Yeah, we got another
and then
one.
the lady in the
Just
blue.
experience, I'm just curious sort of what is next for you, career-wise and professionally?
You know, everybody asks me that question. I have to check with my wife. She's got, I'm telling you, she's got a lot of things for me to do. No, I just want to take a break at first. I've got a lot of speaking engagements. I'm going to be on 3 continents in the next 3 months. And so I'm going to be very busy on that. But then I just want to take a break for a while. And I'll still be active in journalism. I'm going to be active. I'm actually discussing some projects that I can't go into right now. One of them involves, you know, women's rights. Yeah.
From a journalistic perspective, I would like to know your input about what happened with Octavia Nussik by CNN.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
I know. From a journalistic perspective, I would like to know your input about what happened with Octavia Nussik with CNN on Twitter.
Well, you know, I'm going to let Octavia and CNN handle that. No, really, I just don't feel, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel comfortable talking about, you know, somebody else in their career. And I am aware of a few other things on the side that, you know, it wouldn't be right for me. I'm not the person to do it.
Okay, there are the two guys and the students in the back, right?
Oh, hello. I want to welcome you to LAU. I'm not a journalism student. I'm actually an international business student. I want to go back to the point that you mentioned on your PowerPoint about avoiding conflicts with your guests. But that's on Fox News. They're infamous for not avoiding conflicts and with pressuring their guests into saying whatever they want them to say. And does that go back to the character of the interviewer and the character of the channel itself? Or how does that work? Because, I mean, Fox News is known for being the complete opposite of CNN in that perspective.
Well, you know, there's a lot of different interview situations. And depending on the format of your show, the program that you're presenting, it might be confrontational. Where that's what you actually want to promote is more confrontation. Now this is why Bill O'Reilly on his show on Fox, a lot of people didn't want to hold him accountable for some, you know, really egregious exaggerations about his career as a war correspondent. And people say, well, he's not a journalist. He's a performer. He's a host. He's a TV star. He's a personality. He's not a journalist, and nobody thinks he is, and therefore he doesn't, you know, he doesn't adhere to any of those. But to be honest, Fox News was founded by the former head of the Republican National Committee. And I mean, I think everybody can figure it out from there how it worked. You know, CNN's an incredible, amazing story. When you stop and think, there was no 24-hour news before CNN. Now you can go into the airport in Delhi, you'll see 3 different channels, and you think you're watching CNN until you get up close. Some may be in English, some may be in Hindi. Nepal has a 24-hour news network now. Seoul, South Korea opened 4 24-hour news operations in 1 year. So, I mean, it's a huge revolution. And you're going to have more and more channels, I think, that are really dedicated to particular political causes. And I don't support it. It's not journalism. Is it propaganda? It borders on propaganda. I mean, the Chinese have, you know, they all realize that we've got to get our story out there. You know, Russia Today, they have their own point of view. Their news on Ukraine is completely different. And what I encourage journalists and really everyone to do is to look at all of them. I mean, to take a look at the different points of view and how they're being presented. Sometimes it's riddled with propaganda, but other times you're just looking at a different point of view.
This is not a journalism question, sir.
That's right. If I had known the TV cameras were going to be here, I would not have worn the black shirt. Nobody, you said, can I go be the mustache, is it? I was kind of hoping for a mustache question.
You've been into lots of conflicts in the world, and you've spoken with a countless number of people in the conflict. Based on your great experience in this field, if you had the chance to speak with all Syrians, what would you advise them? And I hope that everyone is okay with this question.
Well, you know, I don't know that in speaking to all Syrians, I could give them nothing but my condolences for what they have endured, specifically for the journalists of Syria, those that, without whom we would not be able to even cover the story. I'm talking about young men and women that with a video camera have posted to YouTube for no personal gain of their own, and at great personal peril, to bring the story out, to show us what was happening inside Syria. Minute by minute, city by city, day by day. They have gone throughout almost 5 years of civil war now, and many of them have lost their lives. They're true heroes who have really informed people. And we saw them develop. When they started, they just send out a video. Then they learned, well, I got to put a date on it. You know, I've got to show where I am and put a date on it. Otherwise, it's on YouTube and nobody will know, you know, whether it's real or not. And there have been some fake videos, but they've done a tremendous job. I would say a huge thank you to those people for their sacrifice. But condolences for the people of Syria and for the plight, you know, here in Lebanon and elsewhere around the Middle East of all the people that have been forced to flee their homes.
Hello. I'm a journalism student, and my question is related to Twitter. As a journalist, to what extent do you think you can freely express your opinion without affecting how the audience perceives your objectivity and fairness in your future report or art?
I think that what you can do certainly is reflect the stories that you're covering, you know. You can also have more personal relationships with people and learn more about them. I think that Twitter and other social media are a necessary tool in journalism today.
Yeah, I have a question. Hi. I know you just mentioned that our main problem in this region is that we are limited by the leaders, and it's really tough to criticize them, whereas there will be punishment. But this doesn't really solve our issue. Like, would you have put yourself in that risk and taken that risk if you wanted to get either your story or your message across? Like, would you do it? It's a really tough risk, and we actually want that solution. I don't know if, would you go ahead and do that? Would you go ahead and put yourself in that position to take that risk and to get your story across?
It's a tough question to answer because everybody, you know, I've known journalists, for instance, in Colombia, in places in Latin America, that have for decades faced the same problem. And people, you know, in Iraq, I mean, they didn't call it the Republic of Fear for nothing under Saddam Hussein. Journalists had a very tough time. Journalists have been jailed in Syria, not just for the last year or two, but for decades. And I know there's a lot of pressure on people. I don't know that, well, actually Lebanon, I mean, obviously, there are forces at work here that do risk journalists' lives. I would say, you know, I don't want to claim that I would when I'm not in that circumstance, but yeah, I think journalists have to take that risk. They have to stand up. They have to speak out. It's not, if you take on the profession, there's a certain integrity that you have to uphold. You have to live up to it.
I'm a journalism graduate from LAU. I have two questions, try to summarize them. The first question is, based on your experience in CNN, what is it that CNN does that makes it so of a very high standard? How does CNN maintain its excellence in journalism? How does it maintain its standards across those years? What is it, I'm not going to say the secrets of success, but through your work or the way CNN works, what is it that helps CNN maintain this very high global standard? And my second question is, I'm sure you've got exposed or you've met a lot of moderate Muslims and academic Muslims, whether in the United States or elsewhere. Do you think they are really silent, or are they underexposed? What is the challenge which is preventing them from actually being the most well-heard voice of Islam around the world versus the voice which is being heard from the extremists, which is actually not the true voice? So what is the challenge, or what's the problem of moderate Muslims, which is putting them as if they are silent or not there?
Okay, very quickly on the first question, and that is, it's the quality of the journalists that work at CNN that has kept it balanced when looking at stories and professional in the way that those stories are produced. At the same time, it's the management, the leadership that has said, we're not going to take sides in order to get ratings. We're going to continue to do journalism rather than just to do commercial television that's very profitable. Key on that point. In terms of Muslim voices, they are beginning to speak out. I can tell you, after 9/11 in the United States, many Muslims just wanted to, put their head down and stay under the radar. They didn't want any trouble. Now people are beginning to see that while the more extremist elements are grabbing the headlines and really twisting and bending not only their faith, but their very identity as Muslims or Arabs or both. So it's a very challenging time for them. More groups are being formed, more individuals are beginning to stand up and speak out, and these voices are more credible. For a time there, it was just very few people were willing to stand up. But now I think it's seen in the United States at least, and I think in Europe as well, they want some more, people want a different narrative out there, and they're working to deliver it.
Do you believe that the statements on social media platforms by journalists should be perceived on the same level as their professional reporting?
No, I don't think, social media, I see it as a tool for journalists. And I see it as a way for them to link to their real reporting. In other words, they might have a link to a video that they did, they might have a link to a newspaper article that they wrote. I think that's at least how I see it, how social media plays into all of that. Obviously, when things begin to happen, you can learn about breaking news very quickly.
But considering the way you said something over Twitter, some people are perceiving your point of view. Some people are judging you by the things you tweet or by the things you post online.
Yeah, well, I think that in my case, one night on Twitter isn't going to eclipse 34 years of reporting. That's actually 40 years of reporting, and I did some very major stories before I started with CNN. I mean, most of the people in the room wouldn't remember Jim Jones, who died with more than 900 of his followers in Guyana in South America. But when it was all over, Jim Clancy was the one who was blamed for forcing him out of San Francisco, where he was an absolute fraud and a faith healer. And when he was exposed with several minutes of reporting every single night, he had to leave town.